Welcome back to our daily Bible study. I am Matthew Gage, pastor at Faith Baptist Church in Decatur, Texas. And today we're going to be in Genesis and chapter number 29. Genesis chapter number 29. And in this chapter, we are going to see Jacob arrive at Haran. If you'll remember where we're at, he's left Isaac and Rebekah and his family and has been sent on the mission to go find a wife from, the family, extended family, specifically from Rebekah's family there. That goes back related to Abraham also, but they're sent back to find a wife from there. Now, so we'll see him arrive there. We'll see him find a young lady that he's going to fall in love with, and then the trickster gets tricked a little bit, and the marriage and the fallout there we'll get to here in a little bit. I know you're probably familiar with it, but then we'll start getting into some of the family troubles that Jacob has. So anyway, let's start going through here. Genesis chapter number 29. First one. Then Jacob went on his journey and came into the land of the people of the east. And he looked, and behold, a well in the field. And lo, there were flocks of sheep lying by it. For out of that well they watered the flocks. And a great stone was upon the well's mouth. And thither were all the flocks gathered. And they rolled the stone from the well's mouth and watered the sheep, and put the stone again upon the well's mouth in this place. So here he goes, gathered up. Here comes this place, kind of I won't say pure oasis kind of thing. I don't think you're dealing with like desert, but a wilderness, unsettled type area, good pasture land for sheep. And there's a well here. This is something you'd be very familiar with. This is what you saw Isaac and Abraham doing with the wells and the herds and things. So he comes up, sees these men gathered. Verse 4. And Jacob said to them, My brethren, whence be ye? And they said, Of Haran are we. So he's in the right spot. This is where he's supposed to go. Verse 5. And he said to them, Know ye Laban, the son of Nahor? And they said, We know him. And he said to them, Is he well? And they said, He is well. And behold, Rachel his daughter cometh with the sheep. And he said, Lo, it is yet high day, neither is it time that the cattle should be gathered together. Water ye the sheep, and go and feed them. And they said, We cannot until all the flocks be gathered together, until they roll the stone from the well's mouth, and we water the sheep. So, asked about, I'm at the right place. Is Laban here? Oh, yes. And here comes his daughter with her sheep. A lot of people take from this that it looks like that the tending of the sheep in this area would have been done by the women. I'm not really sure. Most of the time, it seems like it's young men and such. And I know when you get into Jewish culture, fast forward time of David's doing it. And it's more men doing it, it seems like, around that time and further. So I think it's interesting that Rachel is keeping the sheep. I don't really know all the things to make out of that. So it's middle of the day, it's hot, and saying, hey, the sheep need to be grazing, you need to water them. They said, well, we're going to wait till everybody's here. We got this big stone here on the mouth. We need to move. Verse number 9. And while he yet spake with them, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she kept them. And it came to pass, when Jacob saw Rachel, the daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, and the sheep of Laban, his mother's brother, that Jacob went near and rolled the stone from the well's mouth and watered the flock of Laban, his mother's brother. He kind of just jumps in when he sees Rachel come. They say, oh, hey, that's Rachel coming right there. And he sees the flock and stuff. He's like, well, hey, it's my family. I'm going to take care of them. He just kind of jumps in ahead and uncovers the well, which sounds like, in this case, I don't know, this well almost sounds sort of like a spring to me, and they've got it covered because it seems like it's pulling it off, the water's flowing out. I don't know exactly how that worked, but that's kind of my picture here. Verse 11. And Jacob kissed Rachel and lifted up his voice and wept. J. Vernon McGee, in his commentary, said he thought it was funny, this reaction. He's weeping, and it was very matter of fact before, but I think he's been traveling. He's found out I'm at the right place, found out, yes, the family still lives here, and here's Rachel. First thing he does is kisses her. Now, I don't think that's a romantic kiss. That's a greeting kiss. I think that's what that is. I wouldn't read too much into that. And then wept. I think it's just all, the trip, the journey, relief of finding where he's supposed to be just overcomes him. Verse 12. And Jacob told Rachel that he was her father's brother and that he was Rebekah's son, and she ran and told her father. Now, I'll point out here it says his father's brother. No, his mother is his father's sister. He'd be her father's nephew. So I want to point this out that this is one of the cases where the Hebrew language just does not have the terminology that we do for extended family, second cousin twice removed on my father's side, those kind of things like that. So very generic things where a brother can be a cousin. It just kind of means a male relation, or even father and son can mean, a father, a grandfather, or a forefather, going back even further. So you kind of have to remember that with some of these things that are being said right here. Verse 13, and it came to pass when Laban heard the tidings of Jacob and his sister's son, that he ran to meet him and embraced him and kissed him and brought him to his house, and he told Laban all these things. Laban's excited. I mean, it's not like they had mail or cell phones like I'm recording on right now. Has he heard how his sister is doing? He probably hasn't heard, and all of a sudden here comes this grown man, decades later saying, oh, I'm your sister's son, and he's very excited. What's this Isaac guy? How are things going? Are you prospering? And catching up on everything. And Jacob tells him everything, and I think tells how God's prospering them, how things are going, how the health of the family and such. Verse number 14, Laban said to him, surely thou art my bone and my flesh, and he abode with him the space of a month. So for a whole month there, he's just, we're so glad you're here staying. Now, verse number 15, and Laban said unto Jacob, because thou art my brother, shouldest thou therefore serve me for naught? Tell me, what shall thy wages be? Now, there's a certain picture I think you can take from this saying that Jacob wasn't being a help. He wasn't working. He was just laying around, and Laban saying, hey, bud, you need to get up. You need to work. You need to earn your side, earn your keep. I don't think that's necessarily what happens. I think in this time of the place in the world, everybody's working anyway for survival. I mean, it's not like there's a lot of leisure time. Everybody's doing things to make sure you have food and shelter. Even if you have servants, you're still active in taking care of animals and things. So, this deal coming up is basically, I think this is a business deal. Now, Laban, the thing I love about Laban in these stories is, how did Jacob get where he is? Well, Jacob did a little trickery. Him and his mother, they conspired, they fooled their father. He, kind of tricked Esau into selling his birthright. Those kind of elements here. Jacob seems like a shrewd businessman, one that will pull a deal and twist things around to his advantage. And here he gets the other end of that. He kind of gets some humility, I think, here at what Laban does to him. So when Laban's telling us, hey, look, you're here. I want to make sure you're being paid, that you're getting some benefit for being here. So what can we do? Verse 16, Laban had two daughters, and the name of the elder was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. Leah was tender-eyed, but Rachel was beautiful and well-favored. So the characterizations here is that Leah was homely. Ugly duckling was something I saw written about her. Just not as personable, not as appealing, either I think in spirit or appearance. And then you had Rachel, who just seemed to be what every man would want. Very beautiful, and I think even her personality and such that the kind of girl that would never lack for a date on a Friday night. That's who Rachel would be. Verse number 18. And Jacob loved Rachel and said, I will serve thee 7 years for Rachel, thy younger daughter. And verse 19, Laban said, it is better that I give her to thee than that I should give her to another man. Abide with me. Verse 20, and Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed unto him but a few days for the love he had to her. Oh, how sweet. So now there's some elements of this I was thinking about as I was studying this. Number one, the marriage rites and ceremonies and culture and things that would take place this time. Of course, there is something of a payment, a dowry that should take place. We saw that before when the servant went and found Rebecca. He gave them jewelry and gold and some things. Other places in Scripture, you'll see flocks and things that change hands here. Well, here is Jacob, and he doesn't have any of that. Now, he comes from a very wealthy family. Isaac, inherited everything Abraham had and is still prospering, very, very wealthy. And I was thinking back, too, that Jacob, what was he sleeping on there at Bethel? He was sleeping on stones. I almost wonder as he's out here, he's not traveling, doesn't seem to be traveling with a caravan, doesn't seem to have a lot of goods or anything with him. And when it comes time, and he went there to find a wife, but where's the dowry payment and things that should be there? It doesn't look like he's prepared for this, because in this case he says, okay, I want to marry your daughter. I'll work 7 years, my 7 years wages, to marry her as a payment for her. Why didn't he just pull out a checkbook? Why didn't he just pull out a sack of gold or say, hey, see the sheep I brought? They're all yours. I think that's very interesting. It's almost like he just shows up with a shirt on his back. I really don't know what to make of that. I've never really thought about that before until I was just reading this. So give you something to think about as something I'm thinking about as we're looking at this. So, but the deal is struck. Jacob will serve 7 years to marry the younger sister, Rachel. And so 7 years, and then the detail there at the end of verse 20. Oh, the 7 years just flew by because he was just so in love with Rachel. Couldn't wait for the day to marry her. Verse number 21. And Jacob said to Laban, give me my wife, for my days are fulfilled, that I may go in unto her. So time for the marriage to be consummated. And, the labor, the contract, the agreement has been fulfilled. So verse 22, and Laban gathered together all the men of the place and made a feast. Marriages were such a big deal back then. We think we make a big deal about them. We do. Really, most weddings are overboard even today. I kind of wish things would go back the way it was with my grandparents, great-grandparents. Even my parents were married in the living room at my great-grandparents' house. But I had great-grandparents that were married in a car. They just pulled up to the house where the preacher was. He came out, married them, and that was it. I almost wish we could go back to that simplicity, but this was a community type affair in Bible days. Everyone celebrates. There's a lot of feasting, a lot of celebration. Verse 23, and it came to pass in the evening that he took Leah, his daughter. Wait a minute, wrong daughter, not Rachel, Leah. And brought her to him, and he went in unto her. So honeymoon night, come to find out, we're going to see here. Well, let's go ahead and read verse 25 so I don't get ahead of myself. Verse 24, and Laban gave unto his daughter Leah Zilpah his maid for an handmaid. And it came to pass in the morning, behold, it was Leah. And he said to Laban, what is this thou hast done unto me? Did not I serve thee for Rachel? Wherefore hast thou beguiled me? So, imagine waking up day after the wedding and realize, the bride that is there with you in your honeymoon suite is not the person you thought you'd married. Laban has pulled a fast one on Jacob. Jacob's getting a little bit of his own medicine here. And so, now with these cultures and things, like I say, you got to think it's not like electric lights. It's dark, it's evening, and the ceremony, going into a tent with your bride and things like that. I mean, it's dark, not really realizing who it is, what's going on. Sounds like Leah is in on this somehow also. I think there was some planning in pulling this off. So, like I say, Jacob wakes up next morning. Now, we also point out there's a little detail there about Zilpah. She'll pop up again later here. We'll talk about her, believe in the next chapter. So that's a detail. Ties Zilpah to Leah. Verse 26, and Laban said, it must not be done so in our country to give the younger before the firstborn. So it says, wait, around here we've got this custom. Sorry, I forgot to mention it. It was down there in the fine print at the bottom. Yeah, you can marry Rachel, but around here we have to marry the older daughter first. So, hey, I'm sorry, you worked for a daughter. I gave you a daughter. Like I say, Jacob's getting some of his own medicine here. Verse 27, fulfill her week, and we will give thee this also for the service which thou shalt serve me yet 7 other years. Verse 28, and Jacob did so and fulfilled her week, and he gave him Rachel, his daughter, to wife also. We'll go read verse 29 and 30. And Laban gave to Rachel his daughter Bilhah, his handmaid, to be her maid. And he went in also unto Rachel, and he loved also Rachel more than Leah, and served with him yet 7 other years. So the agreement is made that, okay, listen, custom is you have a week-long honeymoon. Once that's up, listen, we'll get back together and we'll work this out. You can also marry Rachel. You can have Rachel too. Not a big deal. You just have to work 7 more years. So that's to double the time he's working just to get the wife that he wants. A little bait and switch action going here in this deal. Note verse 29, also Bilhah, the handmaid, attached to Rachel. We'll see her again. So here we go. When Jacob thinks he's done after 7 years, nope, sorry. Here's the wife you don't want. Here's the wife you do want. You get them both, but you need to work another 7 years to pay for the wife you actually wanted. So, off to a wonderful start in this family. Verse 31. And when the Lord saw that Leah was hated, he opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. Now, this is going to cause a lot of animosity going forward. And there's a lot of things that take place in Jacob's family that come down to what we see here in verse 30 and verse 31, that Rachel was the favored wife with Jacob. But God blesses Leah in kind of a compensation for that, to make up for it. Now, let me stop right here real quick and point this out, and I've mentioned this before. We saw Esau married multiple wives. He had 2, then he married a 3rd one. Was God for polygamy? Is God for polygamy now? Absolutely not. I think the design that is throughout the scriptures is one man and one woman, and there is nowhere in the scriptures where a polygamous relationship like what you see with Jacob and with 2 wives, Rachel and Leah, did you see it work? It is a lot of turmoil, a lot of intrigue and hurt feelings and anger and jealousy. It never works out. I do not believe this was ever the plan, and Jacob was tricked into getting into this situation. And like I say, God used it, and God's going to work through it, through these children that are going to be born. They're going to be the foundation for the nation of Israel. But this was not part of God's original plan for humankind. And like I say, you'll never see it blessed or working out in the scriptures at all. All right, so verse 32, and Leah conceived and bare a son, and she called his name Reuben. For she said, surely the Lord hath looked upon my affliction. Now therefore my husband will love me. That's such a terrible, terrible statement. Reuben means see a son. Look, I had a son. And that was the heart's desire for these brides in these ancient times, was to have a son to carry on the family. There was strength. There was provision in having sons in your family to help, care for the flocks in the fields, to help fight, to help protect, to help carry on the family name, those kind of things. So having a son, big deal. So she said, look, Leah, he loves Leah better, but she doesn't have a son. I had a son. And she's trying to, I think even with that name, saying, look, Jacob, look, I had a son. Aren't you happy? You should be thrilled with me. I've born a firstborn son to you. Verse 33, and she conceived again and bare a son, and said, because the Lord hath heard that I was hated, he hath therefore given me this son also. And she called his name Simeon. Simeon means hearing, that God had heard her cry, or heard her plea, heard her complaint about her situation. I guess we could read into that a lot of different things. So it's like, not only would I have one son, now I have two. Jacob ought to be thrilled with me. And, you know, if I almost picture a baseball scoreboard out there, you know, and you have Leah 0 and Leah. I'm afraid I'm getting these names mixed up, but Leah 0, Leah 2 now. I'm getting them mixed up. Sorry, Leah 2, Rachel 0, and you know, expecting Jacob to say, "Wow, look, amazing! You know, you really ought to be, you know, my favorite wife." It's not working out that way. Let's see here. Verse 34. And she conceived again and bare a son, and said, Now this time will my husband be joined unto me, because I have borne him 3 sons. Therefore was his name called Levi. Levi means a joining. So saying, oh, look, you know, we'll have this relationship. He will be closer to me because I've had 3 sons. Verse 35. She conceived again and bare a son, and she said, Now will I praise the Lord. Therefore she called his name Judah, and left bearing. Judah means praise. She's had 4 sons in a row, and this is the last last child she's going to bear. If I remember right, that's what it says there. You know, she left bearing. So you know, she's got 4 sons, and you know, what man in those days wouldn't have been thrilled to have 4 sons? And these are all going to prove to be, you know, very mighty individuals when it's all said and done. So, like I say, the thing that you have to kind of keep in mind, what's going to build up into the next chapter, is this terrible situation there in the home, where I think at this point we're getting close to the, maybe the end of that 7 years he's supposed to work for Rachel, that second 7 years. And, what's the score? Well, once again, Leah 4 and Rachel 0. And, that's going to cause some animosity, some jealousy, and it's going to lead into some of the actions that are just going to complicate things even worse when we get into the next chapter. So anyway, there we go. We'll wrap this up. I could go on and on about some of these things, especially, like I say, the home life situation here is not ideal by any stretch, and there's a lot of mistakes. And in a lot of ways, I think Jacob is paying for some of his own trickery by being tricked and having to learn some lessons the hard way. And my take on Jacob is that, these early days, he's learning. He's got a lot of rough edges, and it takes a while for him to learn to be the man that his grandfather was, that even his father was. It takes him a lot of time to get to that point of being a man of faith where you can say the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Right now, Jacob is just kind of the continuation of that line, but there's going to be a point where I think his faith is Abraham, Isaac, Jacob is that strong to really claim that place. So anyway, I'm going to quit rambling. I've rambled enough on this chapter. I appreciate you watching, and I hope it's been a help and a blessing to you.